Hello, dear students. My name is Ruchi Sanger, and this lesson is for Class 11 English Core from the NCERT book Hornbill. This is part 2 of Chapter 3, Discovering Tooth. The saga continues. The objective of this lesson is to recapitulate part 1, obviously, form an opinion by analyzing Howard Carter's action. You remember Howard Carter? That's the guy, the archaeologist who unearthed his mummy, Tutankhamun's mummy, in 1922. So the objective would also be to analyze Howard Carter's actions and then to develop an understanding of the evolution of archaeological processes over the decades. This lesson also aims to raise some questions to ponder about. In the beginning, let me first apologize for some sounds that you might hear while I flip through my notes. But other than that, we should be fairly okay. So let's begin. I'll be optimistic in thinking that most of you heeded my advice and caught up on your reading of the chapter, right? Yes, that's great. Give yourself a pat on the back if you've done it. A quick recap before we begin. So, Egypt from the 1380s to the 1320s in the BC, ranging from Amenhotep III to Amenhotep IV and then Tutankhamun, wherein the golden age was Amenhotep III and his son Amenhotep IV did some wacky changes. Does it ring a bell? Ding ding. That's right. Switched from god Amun to god Aten. Changed his name to Akhenaten and made Amara the religious capital by shifting it from Thebes. Can you recollect details about his 9-year-old son? Any two things he did when he became the pharaoh? Waiting. Well, first, reverted to worshipping the old god Amun. Perfect, if you got that right. Second, he changed his name from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamun. I'd like to mention once again that his unexpected death aroused interest among archaeologists. And it was in 1922, I'm repeating this from the last part, that the British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered the burial site in the Valley of Kings. Did you know that he persisted with his archaeological digging with his team, of course, for 15 long years? Can you imagine that kind of perseverance and the amount of money that would be required to carry on a project like that? So obviously he needed to have funds. He was not a rich man. So he was funded at that point of time by the Earl of Carnarvon, who covered the cost of his excavations all through those 15 years. 3,300 years after his burial, Tutankhamun's saga was to unfurl. I remember reading somewhere that it took months to catalogue the funerary treasures discovered in Tutankhamun's tomb. Remember those precious jewelry items, things of daily use? Can you imagine how many there might have been to have taken months to list down? Whew! Anyway, 15 years of digging was child's play compared to the trouble that Carter faced with Tut's mummified body. Before you jump to conclusions, no, it didn't come alive and attack Carter. It was something else. You see, Carter wanted the mummy out of the coffin, right? But the trouble was that it was stuck firm to the bottom of the coffin. Not by some Egyptian magic, but by the raisins that they used during the burial ritual. What would you have done when faced with such a dilemma? There it is, lying in front of you, Tut's mummified body. You're an archaeologist, you need to figure out things, but the body just doesn't come loose out of the coffin. What do you think Carter might have done? I'll tell you what. First, he kept the coffin out in the desert sun, heating it to around 149 degrees Fahrenheit. That should be around 65 degrees Celsius. Imagine the heat in the desert. Hoping that it would melt the raisin. No way. That was solid Egyptian raisin for the burial ritual. Then I'm sure he attempted a couple of other things too, but what we know is that he finally decided to extract the mummy forcibly out of the coffin. Ouch! So Carter began by chiseling beneath the mummy, tuck, 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 till the mummy came loose from the base. After that, he separated every joint of the mummy's body. The head was separated from the body too. When Howard Carter was heavily criticized for what he'd done, he defended his actions by saying that he had to disjoint and dislodge the mummy to remove the golden ornaments that Tooth was wearing. Bracelets, collars, amulets, rings, sandals, even the apron, etc. were all solid gold. Carter stated that thieves would have ransacked the tomb, outwitted the guards, and destroyed the mummy to steal these jewelry pieces. Once Carter's men had finished removing the ornaments, they reassembled the mummy, thank God, on a layer of sand in a wooden box. Can you imagine why they put the sand? They put the sand to camouflage all the damage that was done to the body. After Carter's discovery in 1922, an anatomy professor in 1968 x-rayed Tooth's mummy and discovered that the front ribs and the breastbone were missing. Imagine, maybe an oversight by Carter's men when they were piecing the mummy back together. Did they get careless? Well, we'll get to know. The next significant year would be 2003, the year the Egyptian Mummy Project began recording the number of mummies discovered. They recorded as many as 600 mummies by that time. The project intended to subject the mummies to a CT scan. How did they intend doing that? Well, they didn't take them to the hospital, if that's what you're thinking. They got hold of a portable CT scan machine. Do you know how much it cost? It cost $1 million. The first choice, naturally, was the mysterious King Tut's mummy. As in life, even now, King Tut was leading the way for the Egyptians. This is the point where the chapter begins on page 23 actually. The transfer of the mummy from the burial tomb for the first time in more than 3,000 years. It was on 5th of January in 2005 at precisely 6 p.m. The purpose was to be able to find an answer to the mystery surrounding Tooth's unexplained and sudden death and get an accurate idea of what his age was when he died. Till now, people had just been guessing 17, 18, 19. Tooth's exit from the tomb was greeted by dark clouds in the sky and a forceful dust-gathering wind. Just 20 minutes after the CT scan had started, the cooler fan of the scanner stopped working. Ooh. And people had to run to get the normal plastic fans to get the sand out. They managed. Could it have been the mummy's curse? Ooh, just a thought. Anyway, around 3 hours later, Tooth was back in the tomb. The CT scan records revealed that the rib cage was in place. Archaeologists heaved a sigh of relief. A.R. Williams reveals that when the team came out of the tomb after leaving Tooth back in his burial place, the wind was still and cold. They could see the constellation Orion in the sky. To Anne Williams, it was almost as if the god of afterlife was watching over young Tooth. Interesting, isn't it? So, dear children, what you might want to think about is number one, does scientific intervention justify unearthing the dead? Should we not respect funeral rites, the buried, the dead? Number two, how do you think the advances in forensic analysis, the CT scan, etc., have given us conclusive evidence from the past? Have they helped or not? Number three, describe Carter's investigation and explain why it was resented. Why did people not like it? What were their issues? Number four, comment on the reign of three pharaohs of the 18th dynasty, Amenhotep III, Amenhotep IV, and Tutankhamun. Well, I hope Tooth Saga and its continuation has formed a clear idea for all of you. That would be all from this lesson. Good day.